Hey guys, how you doing? Just getting off work, heading home. What's banging around in my head today? You know what, Rex Murphy. I did it. You know what's so funny? I did a one-off like Rex Murphy thing, thinking like, man, I'm just gonna do a quick video. It ended up being like 5 minutes. I was cranky and tired, and so I did a shit job of it. And I basically just yelled at Rex Murphy, who deserves to be yelled at, by the way. And it's my most viewed video, so. Just goes to show you, man, the things you work on the least are the things that will be seen the most. Seems to be the case. In any case, Rex Murphy, he comes out with a new one today, a new opinion piece, which, I mean, it's essentially a advertisement for the oil company, who are the people who are buying anything that exists in the National Post in the first place. So let's not pretend like Rex Murphy's opinion is his own anymore, right? But I forget the title of the piece, but it was like Trudeau's fallacious green policy or something like this. And in it, he essentially complains that, oh, they're putting solar panels on ambulances. What a small, insignificant, pithy thing. And that's the heart of the piece. And he expounds on this at length. So there's two things about this that I think are asinine and pretty pathetic, actually, at this stage in the game, which is conservative strategy number one. Be a contrarian. Doesn't matter what the left does. Doesn't matter if it feeds children or helps people, right? Doesn't matter if you're facing the largest existential threat in the history of mankind, right? Doesn't matter. Be a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. The purpose of conservatism is now to divide the populace, right? Around any line they possibly can. Conservatives have allied themselves completely with corporate power, who has shown pretty clearly and unrepentantly that their allegiance is to themselves and to money, and if they need to rally against the most reprehensible people in the society, the racists and the bigots, and people who deny that there's systemic racism in Canada, like Rex Murphy, who openly says that there is no systemic racism in Canada, a country that had residential schools where Catholic priests would kidnap children and put them in, the last one closing in the mid-90s. No systemic racism in Canada. Oh, okay. If you're saying that, you're an intellectual fraud, and Rex Murphy is an intellectual fraud, who is a contrarian for the sake of being a contrarian. Like, if he was talking about larger sweeping changes that the Trudeau government might be putting forward, he would be saying the same thing. It'd be the same notes, the same riff, right? The same kind of stuff, because he's not interested in honest analysis. He's just throwing stones for the sake of throwing stones, because he's not actually literate or intelligent enough to formulate an analysis, right? He's just a well-spoken idiot. And this gives the second strategy that conservatives are now using pretty regularly. And this comes straight out of Jordan Peterson, right? Take a lot of time and use a lot of flowery language to say absolutely nothing of merit. And that's Jordan Peterson, and that's certainly Rex Murphy. So what you do is you create an incomprehensible web of language that uses all the thesaurus words. Pull out the dictionary. Really take use of Microsoft Word's thesaurus function, right? Really make sure that you expound with veracity and veracity and say the same thing over and over and over again, just using different words and different configurations to get across a point that could be said in 3 or 4 sentences. And that's Rex Murphy in a nutshell, right? He's not, he doesn't actually have anything intelligent to say. He doesn't actually lend anything to the conversation. He exists so that people who already agree with his narrow worldview can scoff amongst one another. That's why he exists. He exists so that people who don't work, who aren't workers, who don't have any concern to worry about uh, climate change or anything, because they're going to be dead by the time it actually matters. Or if it does matter, they'll be so old that who cares? Something's got to get you. It might as well be climate change. It's so that these guys can stand in a room with one another and chortle like school children, pretending like they have any idea what's going on when they're probably the most illiterate people in the room, because they're conservatives. And if they weren't illiterate, they wouldn't be conservatives. The like Rex Murphy speaks well. He has a good grasp of the English language. He does not understand the concept of what climate change is. He's a climate change denialist, obviously. Or if he does, he certainly doesn't care, because he has no stakes. There's no stakes in it for him, right? And this ties into a major problem of what's going on in the Conservative Party, is that to them it's just a game, right? To them, this politics thing is just a game that they want to win. They're not interested in the fact that real people lose their jobs and their livelihoods. They're not interested in the fact that real people are going to be and are being hurt by the acceleration of climate change. They don't care about that at all. What they care about is that they want to win the game. Right? This is why they can't really bring up any points that are honest. They don't really have it, and they don't really have anything to offer the populace, because to them it's just about whoever has the highest number in their bank account is winning. That's why when a liar and a sociopath like Doug Ford gets into power, he's fine with cutting services for people who live in poverty, because it means that his numbers go up, right? And he thinks, oh, well, their numbers go down, so they're losing, right? And they're just losers. And they're just crying because they're losers. Like, he's not accepting that, no, there's such a thing as hunger. Exposure exists, right? Like, if you want to put it in game terms, like, Doug Ford could never play the game that these people are playing, because they're dealing with things like starvation and exposure, whereas Doug Ford, he's never been hungry a day in his life. Just look at his fat face. That's really obvious. Doug Ford gets to say reprehensible and cluelessly stupid things like, people with disabilities should just go back to work. That's how incomprehensibly stupid Doug Ford is. And the only difference between Doug Ford, who is on a level of stupidity that really rivals, I think, anyone who probably has been in the private sector or in the public sector. But the only difference between Doug Ford and Rex Murphy is that Rex Murphy has a grasp on the English language that Doug Ford does not, right? Rex Murphy, instead of saying people on disability should get jobs, would expound with long language until the meaning of what he's saying is so obfuscated that no one could understand. Or if anyone did say, are you saying that people who can't work should get jobs? He would be like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. It's much more nuanced than that, right? You misunderstand me. Which is, when you have nothing worth saying, you can say that kind of thing, right? When you're a well-spoken idiot, you can just fall back onto, oh, no, you misunderstand me. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. As soon as you get painted into a corner or pigeonholed as, the outright racist that you actually are. And let's be really straight up, man. Like, Rex Murphy is a racist. If you're standing up and you're saying that there's no systemic racism in Canada, you are either the most illiterate person possible, right? Like, and I'm not trying to say that is an insult. You may just be illiterate. Like, there's a lot of it going around. You may just be ignorant of Canada's, like, most basic history, right? And I'm talking like kindergarten level. Like, this is pretty low level, guys. Like, Canada is systemically racist. It has systemically racist policies. There are policies that have been passed, that have happened in the past, which are still having a profound effect today. Absolutely, Canada is dealing with a systemic racism, and it has a history of systemic racism. And if you don't think that, you are either ignorant and need to be educated, or you are a racist. And someone with Rex Murphy's education could not possibly be ignorant of the residential schools, could not possibly be ignorant of the consistent assault on the First Nations people. Like, you can't possibly be ignorant of Canada's history of slavery. Like, you can't possibly be ignorant of these things. And yet it seems as though he is. And it seems as though... So when he stands up and he speaks, we're supposed to take him seriously as a writer, when it's obvious he doesn't actually know what he's saying. He doesn't actually understand the concept. And, like, let's take a look at his view of climate change, right? He obviously doesn't really believe it's a problem. And it certainly isn't a problem for him. And he's sort of emblematic of the boomer generation, right? Well, we'll all be dead soon, so it won't really matter. And meanwhile, the Zoomers, right? People who are 20 are like, yeah, it's super gonna fucking matter, dude. Can you actually help me? Right? It's akin to, like, a guy who's on in a lifeboat watching a bunch of people attempt to bail water, right, out of a sinking ship, saying, well, what are you all so worried about? Like, everybody has the right to be angry at that guy, and maybe he should get out of the lifeboat and start bailing. Right, but he's not going to. Right, a guy like Rex Murphy, he's never worked a day in his life. He is illiterate. He doesn't understand the issues that are in front of him. And if you think otherwise, it's because he's duped you with his grasp of the English language. Right, he's a con man, like all conservatives are con men. And all he does is sit behind a keyboard and say the same things 5 different ways, and then get it published in the National Post, who apparently will publish anything any fraud says, so long as it's in defense of corporate capitalism, which is an irredeemable and unrepentantly evil force in the world that should be extracted. Yeah, I think that's everything I have to say about the illiterate idiot and well-spoken moron that is Rex Murphy. Maybe he should actually read a book. Even Naomi Klein's stuff would be good to read, right? Disaster Capitalism, her stuff about, no logo. Maybe he should actually, crack open a book every so often and have a read about what's actually happening in the world. I also recommend Chris Hedges' work. I think maybe if Rex Murphy had a grasp on what's actually going on historically, he would actually learn something and maybe actually say something worth listening to, instead of fomenting the absolute most asinine and worst elements in our society. The fact that he's being published at all at this stage in the game really goes to show you how far we've fallen back on our desire to actually have a meaningful conversation in the society, right? A guy like Rex Murphy shows up, says nothing important, but he says it well, and so we're all supposed to pay attention to what he has to say, when the reality is he's about as important as, like, a Garfield cartoon strip at this point, right? Like, he's not particularly interesting. He's not saying anything worth listening to, and yet there seems to be, but because he's in the team, he's in the conservative team, his audience will willingly at the stupid, meaningless bullshit that comes out of his mouth. Because they also don't believe that climate change is real. Because they also don't think that systemic racism is real. Because they're also fine with contrarian behavior that helps no one, not even them. And I'm not saying that we should cancel Rex Murphy. Like, I don't believe in the whole cancel culture thing. But certainly if I met somebody and they told me that they think Rex Murphy's the bee's knee, I would tell them, oh, why do you get your information from illiterate people who speak well? So Hopefully one day the National Post becomes an interesting place where interesting people write things that are of merit or of note, but I doubt that will happen until capitalism has been laid low here in Canada. I don't think that, like the National Post, it subserviates itself to corporate power. Um, and I mean, on a larger level, right, it gets very concerning that, like, the Globe and Mail is owned by David Thompson, who's the wealthiest Canadian, right? We should be very concerned about that. The National Post is obviously owned by the oil companies. We should be very concerned about that. And now the Toronto Star, which was always considered a left-leaning paper because it was owned kind of by a group of people collectively, is now owned by two conservatives. So we should be very concerned that our media is now no longer capable of having a legitimate conversation, and that people like Rex Murphy are comfortable standing up, spreading around their racist bullshit and ignorant nonsense that sounds super nice, but doesn't do anything except allow the worst elements of our society to believe they're intelligent when they are the opposite. All right, that's the end of me. Like, share, subscribe. It makes me feel good when people comment and subscribe and say things and give likes and all that kind of stuff. It warms my heart every single time. So please, if you're sitting there and you've made it here, just give it a click. It's just a click, right? It means you'll see my dumb face more, but that's the punishment. Go have sex, have a smoke, have a drink, have a laugh, make love, ask that girl out, ask that boy out, do all that stuff. Don't live in fear. Fear is temporary. Your life is your own. Seize it by the balls. Have fun.